The election of 1864 and end of the Civil War. Lincoln's opponent, General George McClellan, campaigned on a peace platform. In the South, citizens openly defied the civil authority, and yet both sides fought on. Victories throughout the summer of 1864 played a large part in helping Lincoln gain re-election. In April 1865, the Confederate leaders surrendered. John Wilkes Booth assassinated Lincoln just weeks before the final surrender took place. More than 3 million men fought in the war, and of them more than 500,000 died. Both governments ran up huge debts. The South was decimated by Union soldiers. During Sherman's march from Atlanta to the sea in the fall of 1864, the Union Army burned everything in its wake. After the war, the federal government remained large. Reconstruction and Johnson's impeachment. With Lincoln's assassination, Vice President Andrew Johnson assumed the presidency. Johnson, a Southern Democrat, had opposed secession and strongly supported Lincoln during his first term. Lincoln rewarded Johnson with the vice presidency. When the war ended, Congress was in recess. That left the early stages of Reconstruction entirely in Johnson's hands. Johnson's Reconstruction Plan, which was based on a plan approved by Lincoln, called for the creation of provisional military governments to run the states until they were readmitted to the Union. Required all Southern citizens to swear a loyalty oath before receiving amnesty. However, it barred many of the former Southern elite from taking that vow, thus prohibiting their participation in the new governments. States would have to write new constitutions eliminating slavery and renouncing secession. Johnson pardoned many of the Southern elite who were supposed to have been excluded from the reunification process. The plan did not work. Many of their new constitutions were only slight revisions of previous constitutions. Southern legislators also passed a series of laws defining the status of freedmen. Black codes limited freedmen's right to assemble and travel and restricted their access to public institutions. The codes instituted curfew laws and laws requiring blacks to carry special passes. When Congress reconvened in December 1865, the new Southern senators included the Vice President of the Confederacy and other Confederate officials. Northern Congressmen were not pleased. Congress voted not to seat the new Southern delegations. Then it set about examining Johnson's Reconstruction Plan. The Radicals wanted a Reconstruction that punished the South for seceding, confiscated land from the rich, and redistributed among the poor. Johnson refused to compromise. Instead, he declared Reconstruction over and done with. The Radicals drew up the plan that came to be known as Congressional Reconstruction. Its first component was the 14th Amendment to the Constitution. It prohibited states from depriving any citizen of life, liberty, or property without due process, gave states the choice either to give freedmen the right to vote or to stop counting them among their voting population, barred prominent Confederates from holding political office, and excused the Confederacy's war debt. The new Congress quickly passed the Military Reconstruction Act of 1867. It imposed martial law on the South. The act also required each state to ratify the 14th Amendment. Congress then passed a number of laws designed to limit the president's power. Johnson did everything in his power to counteract the congressional plan. House Judiciary Committee initiated impeachment proceedings against Johnson. Although impeachment failed, the trial rendered Johnson politically impotent. New President Ulysses S. Grant. The 15th Amendment, proposed in 1869, finally required states to enfranchise black men. The 15th Amendment passed only because Southern states were required to ratify it as a condition of re-entry into the Union. A number of Northern states opposed the amendment. The failure of Reconstruction. Southern governments, directed mostly by transplanted Northern Republicans, blacks, and Southern moderates, created public school orphanages. However, although government industrialization plans helped to rebuild the Southern economy, these plans also cost a lot of money, public opinion already antagonistic to Reconstruction even more hostile. Opponents waged a propaganda war, calling Southerners who cooperated scalawags and Northerners who ran the programs carpetbaggers. Many who participated in Reconstruction were indeed corrupt. Accompanying the propaganda war was a war of intimidation, spearheaded by the Ku Klux Klan. Klan targeted those who supported Reconstruction. It attacked and often murdered scalawags, black and white Republican leaders, community activists, and teachers. President Grant enforced the law loosely. Supreme Court consistently restricted the scope of the 14th and 15th Amendments. Slaughterhouse case, the court ruled that the 14th Amendment applied only to the federal government, an opinion the court United States versus Cruikshank. United States versus Reese, the court cleared the way for grandfather clauses, poll taxes, property requirements, and other restrictions on voting privileges. Several congressional acts, among them the Amnesty Act of 1862, pardoned many of the rebels, thus allowing them to re-enter public life. By 1876, Southern Democrats had regained control of most of the region's state legislatures.